Yeah, I mean, Dan is not a guy who enjoys being told what to do, so that didn't necessarily surprise me. And I think, in the column I did write that, Dan is someone who has built a reputation as a bit of a quarterback guru. He's worked with Jim Tebow, Alex Smith, Dak Prescott, did a good job last year with Kyle Trask. So he has earned the benefit of the doubt. And I think if you saw what he said yesterday, I think what I took from it was that he wants, his young star kind of freshman quarterback, Anthony Richardson, he wants him to develop the right habits, and so he specifically mentioned this one play in which, he kind of did the wrong thing and it worked out really well. And so I think he's basically trying to make sure that he has the right fundamentals and things like that moving forward. But certainly, I don't pretend to be a football expert, but I mean, if you watch them, you can see that he provides something different than Emory Jones provides. And, the point of that column was that if you're going to beat Alabama, especially after they lost all the players they did last year, that's talking about Florida, you got to do something different. You're going to have to make some of these big plays. And I think he's the guy who can do that better than Emory Jones is going to be able to against this, pretty stout Alabama defense.
Talking to John Talty. John, it depends on which side you talk to. I'm talking to friends in Gatorland today, and they feel like this is one of the most anticipated games maybe since Steve Spurrier was there. Well, maybe a few games during Urban Meyer's tenure, but not many number one teams have come in there. But on the other side, you live in Alabama. How is this game being viewed where you are?
To be honest, Paul, I think it's been very quiet. I don't get there's something about, and again, we live in a COVID world, so it's a little bit different than, being out and about all the time the way we normally would be. But there's just not that buzz that you normally feel when there's a big game. I mean, it's only Tuesday, but I can just tell, big game week in terms of the amount of people that are reading our stories on AL.com, the amount of people interacting with us. Like, I just haven't really seen it. I think the thing that's gotten the most attention today is kind of a comment that Jordan Battle made about the jokes that Nick Saban likes to make. That's gotten way more attention than I feel like the game has this week thus far. So I think that, as you look ahead, I think that the Texas A&M game will probably get more attention. And I think especially because of your guy, Lane Kiffin, that Ole Miss game at home on October 2nd, I think it's going to get a lot of hype. Those are the two games that I feel like we're going to feel more of that big game atmosphere. I'm not feeling it from the Alabama side of things. And I think that could also partly be, Paul, because I don't think Alabama fans are worried about this game. I think they fully expect to win. And so there's not that worried feeling of nervousness getting ready for that game. I think they expect to go into Gainesville and win. And so maybe on the Gainesville, Florida side of things, there's that optimism that they can knock off big bad Alabama. But I'm not getting it in the Alabama side of things.
You just gave every Florida talk show host a lot to talk about tomorrow morning with that comment. I don't think Alabama games are too worried about this. Let me ask you about the other game. Should Penn State fans be worried about Auburn coming to Happy Valley Saturday night?
I think that's one of the more interesting games of the season, honestly, Paul. And I think it's an especially big game for Brian Harsin and what he can establish in year one. They've looked very good in the first two games. They beat up on teams they were supposed to beat up on. This is a really strong early test to go to at Penn State. The crowd's going to be wild. It's their whiteout game. I think there's a lot of expectations around this game. So I think Penn State's certainly the team that you would probably pick as of right now to win that game. But if you can get a strong performance out of Bo Nix, Tank Bigsby continues to do the things he can do. Defense plays well. I mean, I think a win here for Auburn and Brian Harsin would really give them some positive momentum moving on this season. Losing that game to Penn State early on, yes, it's non-conference, doesn't really illuminate them from doing any of the things they want to do, but I do think it makes that margin of error a bit smaller, and I think could potentially crank up the pressure over the course of the season if they lose some of these games to what's looking like a pretty strong SEC West this year. So I think it's a really interesting game, and it's one of the ones that I think, to me, it's honestly the more interesting game actually than Alabama-Florida.
I just canceled my reservation to Gainesville, by the way, based on your comments, John. Let me go to the.
Still time to book a flight to Pittsburgh if you want.
I haven't been to Happy Valley in a while. I'm going to see if I can get up there. Talking to John Talty. John, I want to come back to the SEC, but I want to deviate for a second. It was 24 hours ago that we learned that Clay Helton had been fired. And today, I don't know, every name has been put into this pot. And it is early, but you have sources all over college football. What's legitimate? What sounds right for this job?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, I think the program we were just talking about, Penn State, I mean, I think James Franklin is a very obvious name for that job. You know, he's someone who I think his personality could fit, you know, out west. I think he has kind of that magnetic personality. I think he'd be able to recruit very well out in California and be able to kind of get USC back to where it should be. I think Mario Cristobal's done a really good job kind of taking over the Pac-12 at Oregon, and so they need someone who can bring that charisma and personality. And I think that James Franklin could be a good person to do that. I think that, you know, looking around, you know, I've seen already the mentions of Luke Fickell and Matt Campbell. To me, those guys don't necessarily make sense. I think those are more Midwest guys, and I think if that Michigan job opens up, both Campbell and Fickell would make a lot more sense in those spots. So I think Franklin makes a lot of sense early on. I think there's going to be a lot of names and a lot of people jockeying for that job, and I think it's, you know, they clearly have a lot of time to look at, you know, what might make sense. And I think, you know, you saw today with, I think somebody mentioned the Chiefs offensive coordinator with that job as well. So you could see potentially some NFL names throw their names into the hat. But I think Franklin is the one I think is getting the early buzz right now. But again, I mean, it'll be months before they probably make a hire.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.